Bloomberg Businessweek, Trump is a builder, and what he's built is the underlying apparatus for a political movement that's going to propel us to victory on November 8th and dominate Republican politics after that. And what if it doesn't propel Donald Trump to victory on election night? Will the Trump machine still dominate Republican politics after that? Will Donald Trump and his team try to create a new media enterprise? Will they try to create a new political party, an independent party that would wage war on both the Democrat and Republican parties? As much as Donald Trump wants to deny the validity of all the polls that show him losing, one Trump campaign staffer told Bloomberg Businessweek, quote, "Nate Silver's results have been similar to ours." That Trump campaign staffer confirmed that Trump's own polling shows him losing in the same way that Nate Silver's projections show Donald Trump losing. So when the Trump campaign looks at those polls, what do they really expect to be doing on November 9th? The Bloomberg article reports by Election Day, the campaign expects to have captured 12 million to 14 million email addresses and contact information, including credit card numbers, for 2.5 million small dollar donors who together will have ponied up almost $275 million. I wouldn't have come aboard even for Trump if I hadn't known they were building this massive Facebook and data engine, says Bannon. Facebook is what propelled Breitbart to a massive audience. We know its power. If Hillary Clinton is president and she is trying to fill a vacancy on the Supreme Court, what will the Trump-Bannon machine do? What will they tell Republicans to do? Yesterday, Ted Cruz raised the possibility that a Republican Senate will simply never confirm a Supreme Court justice appointed by President Obama, whose latest appointment they've delayed for almost a year, or by a new President Clinton. He said there is certainly long historical precedent for a Supreme Court with fewer justices. I would note just recently that Justice Breyer observed that the vacancy is not impacting the ability of the court to do its job. That's a debate that we are going to have. Joining us now, Sasha Issenberg, a contributor to Bloomberg Politics, who co-wrote that piece, Inside the Trump Bunker, with 12 days to go. That's the title of the piece. Also with us, David Frum, senior editor for The Atlantic. Sasha, so much amazing reporting. As you know, we've already talked about it in the beginning of the show tonight, your article tonight. But this massive database that they have built, isn't there now some dispute as to who owns that information? What is owned by the Republican Party and what is owned by the Trump campaign and owned by Donald Trump?
Yeah, there are a few different types of data, and there are a few different lists, and they have sort of different provenances and different ownership. There's the approximately 2.5 million small donors you mentioned. They gave money jointly to the RNC and the Trump campaign, and both entities have access to those names. There's another list that the Trump campaign estimates will be another 10 million or so names by Election Day. These are people who haven't given money but have signed up, given an email address or a cell phone number for mobile communication. These are supporters who've signed up as activists. The Trump campaign alone paid to advertise and build that list, and our understanding is that the Trump campaign owns that list and the RNC has no claim to it.
David Frum, I don't want to suggest that this campaign is over, that this election is over. There's a distinct possibility Donald Trump could win this. It's still present. But for the moment, let's anticipate a world in which Donald Trump doesn't win, and you have this team together with all this information that they've gathered. In political terms, what would you expect them to use it for? Would you expect them, for example, to insist that if it's a Republican Senate, no Supreme Court justice gets confirmed for 4 years?
Well, I want to honor Sasha's amazing reporting. It's not a criticism in any way of him or his work to suggest that his sources are deluding themselves about the power of what they've put together. When Donald, should he lose, and should he lose as big as he's going to, there is going to be a scorched earth period of recrimination, and Donald Trump will be the target of the recriminations, and the people around him will be the target of the recrimination. And as we discover in the weeks and months after the election how much self-dealing there has been in the campaign, how badly the campaign was run, and how even before it was over, how everyone was preparing their parachutes and their post-election strategies, there's going to be a revulsion in the Republican Party against this crew. I don't think they are going to have the clout they imagine they'll have. Even Organizing for America, President Obama's extraordinary effort, after it was successful, ceased to be powerful. Now imagine how much more true that is going to be if people were unsuccessful. I think we are going to discover we're in a new terrain with new faces and new personalities and new issues driven by opposition to the agenda of the Hillary Clinton administration, should there be one.
Let's listen to what John McCain said in a radio interview about the Supreme Court.
I promise you that we will be united against any Supreme Court nominee that Hillary Clinton, if she were president, would put up. And I promise you.
Sasha, the reason I wanted everyone to hear that is I don't see any difference between Ted Cruz and John McCain on this issue, and I think we know where a Breitbart-inspired Trump entity would be on issues like that if there is a Clinton presidency.
That may be so, although Steve Bannon seems to have the greatest enmity towards Republican leaders, especially Paul Ryan, and seems to enjoy sort of zagging against the Republican establishment when other Republicans are, I guess, zigging against Democrats in power. And so whatever form the sort of post-Trump enterprise takes, whether it's a media organization or some sort of political institution, I wouldn't necessarily think that it would be a sort of dogmatic ancillary to existing Republican institutions in Washington. I think Bannon has proved that he sees the market niche doing something different, and that's often being at odds with other Republican leaders and their priorities.
David, from Rush Limbaugh loses a lot of elections. I mean, as a cheerleader, he ends up being the cheerleader for losers. He's certainly lost the last two presidential elections. He doesn't seem to lose any influence through that process. And if Donald Trump is more in the Rush Limbaugh mold than in the Romney mold, or the mold of previous losers of presidential races, it seems to me that Donald Trump would be able to wield whatever power Rush Limbaugh continues to wield.
I just don't agree with that. I mean, Donald Trump promised that he would win so much that we were going to be sick of winning. After 3 defeats, if that's what happens, we are going to be really sick of losing. And I think Republicans are going to start to do the things they need to do in order to win. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be an amazing fight over the Supreme Court nomination. I mean, one of the things that is at issue, President Obama has issued a series of executive orders amounting to a kind of immigration amnesty that all conservatives, even John McCain, think is lawless. If the wrong person is appointed to the Supreme Court, they may ratify those executive orders. And even people who agree with the underlying policy are going to say this is an unconscionable way to do it. And many conservatives, of course, including myself, disagree with the underlying policy. So we're going to have a big fight over that. We're going to have a lot of fights. And as those fights progress, new leaders will come to the fore, more competent than Donald Trump, and they will build a national constituency.
Sasha Issenberg and David Frum, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you.